Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 17. And even with the Teofimo Lopez fight getting canceled, we got a huge weekend of boxing. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong man, good boy, just...
Alright, let's talk about the big fight. Juan, Macias, Montiel versus Jermall Charlo. Now, this Charlo twin is the one who I consider to be the better of the two. Both the Charlos, Jermall and Jermall, are really good. But Jermall Charlo, I feel, he's the undefeated. He's 31-0 with 22 knockouts. Is the premier fighter right now out of these guys. And now at 160 pounds, he's up there and as good as anybody. He is. I truly believe it. Now, who do we have in this weight class? Let's talk about the weight class for a second. We have Derevyanchenko, Eubank Jr., Lara, Munguia, Andrade, obviously, and Golovkin. So a decent weight class, But out of that bunch, and at 38 years old, I don't think Golovkin is the king at 160 anymore. I don't think he is. I think we have a new king at 160, and that is Jermall Charlo. I think he has already beaten Sergey Derevyanchenko quite convincingly. Derevyanchenko had some rounds, but overall it was a wash. I think I had it 117-111. I think that's how I had the fight. A lot of people would say, oh, but you remember his fight against Karabov where he was losing most of those rounds and he probably should have lost the fight. Yeah, I do remember it. I think I had it 6 rounds apiece in that fight. I do think that fight was probably a draw. I think that Karabov faded towards the end. That's true. He dominated the early parts of the round and couldn't miss with his left hand. But then Charlo was able to, whether it be because Karabov slowed down or whatever it is, Charlo was able to come around and, I think, kind of secure the last half of the fight and in turn get the victory. He also has victories over Julian Williams at 154 and Austin Trout. Just some of the notable ones here. So here he is fighting against Juan Montiel. Now, Montiel's a big kid. He's 6'1", 27 years old, 22-4 with 2 draws, 22 by knockouts. That means every single fight he's had, he's won. But he's also got 4 defeats, and one of those was by knockout. He was knocked out by Munguia. Now, I don't think this is going to be a particularly competitive fight. I'm going to be frank with you here. I think Jermall Charlo is a very high caliber fighter and is quite obviously the favorite here. I think he's going to be setting up open right hands on Montiel all night long. And I actually don't think this is going to be an all night long kind of a fight. Like, Munguia is a strong puncher, but I don't think he's that strong. So over here, again, we have, I wouldn't even put any money on betting on against Charlo or on Montiel. I don't think it's happening. I know he's a plus 1,200 Montiel is. Guys, again, this is not financial advice, please. Please, you're going people, please, you make your own bets. You make your own bets. This is just what I'm doing. I'm not suggesting anyone do anything. So if you're looking at the fight, the over 5.5 is at minus 106. That means you got to bet $106 to win $100. And the under 5.5 is at minus 125. Now, Jermall Charlo is a very good puncher. He really is. I think he is a quite a bit of a knockout artist. But here's the but. In his past 6 or 7 fights, I think here, let's count. In his past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights at middleweight now. Remember, he started at 154. At middleweight, he's had 4 knockouts. Sorry, 3 knockouts. Did I count that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. So he has 3 fights that went the distance, and 3 fights that where he stopped the opponent. So Dennis Hogan was TKO'd in the 7th. Centeno Jr. was KO'd in the 2nd. And Sebastian Highland was KO'd in the 4th. Karabov, of course, as we talked about, went the distance. Brandon Adams went the distance. And his most recent fight, Sergey Derevyanchenko, went the distance. What does this tell me? Well, I mean, it tells me that he's still got power. But does he have power to get rid of Macias Montiel in under 5.5 rounds? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I like the over 5.5 over here. Guys, I'm not particularly confident in that bet, but I think the taller Montiel should be able to be resilient enough early on and make the distance. Make the distance with him. Then again, here, let me tell you guys the flip side, just so you know what you're betting on. Montiel was stopped by Munguia in 2 rounds. 2 rounds. Next, he had a split decision draw against Centeno, who Jermall Charlo got out in 2 rounds himself. So against comparable opponents, Montiel is a significantly worse fighter. So what we're really trying to find out here is because I think Jermall Charlo is going to stop Montiel. The question is when. 5.5 again, guys, means the 5th round mouse pass. So in the 6th round at 1 minute and 30 seconds. That's what I like. Does Montiel make it to the middle of that 6th round? That's all we're going to be asking. And I think, given that at 160, Jermall Charlo's a 50-50, has a 50-50 KO ratio, 50% KO ratio. The over 5.5 kind of makes sense. That's around 50%. That's what you're getting. Doubling your money, basically. So think of it this way. This is like a roulette spin based on the kind of knockouts he has at 160 and based on the odds you're given. And that's kind of how I like to think of fights. This is basically a red-black roulette spin. Basically 50-50. So, like I said, I like the over 5.5. And I think Jermall Charlo stops him probably in the middle rounds. Question is, can he survive to that 7th, 8th, 9th round? Now, let's move on. We got a lot of fights to talk about here. Okay. So now we got, of course, the monster. Inoue. So Inoue is back. And he's fighting against Michael Dos Marinas. Dos Marinas is a pretty good fighter. He's a pretty good fighter. He's a big fighter. He has 2 defeats. Dos Marinas is 32 with 1 draw, 20 knockouts, and 1 of those defeats came by knockout. Most recently, he had a split decision draw against Magno Planje in Singapore. But before that, he hasn't lost in 8 years, which he lost to by a split decision, and that KO was early on in his fight career, back down at 110 pounds. So, what are we thinking over here? Well, I think this at plus 900. I think we can smell this a little bit. Dos Marinas is going to be 2 inches taller than Inoue. He's 5'7" to Inoue's 5'5". And it's true, Inoue recently put out Jason Maloney. But he had a pretty tough fight against Nonito Donaire in the outing prior to that. And Nonito Donaire, what was one of his attributes that troubled Inoue outside of Nonito Donaire being a very good fighter? Inoue, was much smaller than Donaire. Donaire was exactly the same size as Michael Dos Marinas, with a similar knockout ratio. So what I'm thinking, Mr. Hot and Spicy Dos Marinas may have a little bit of a chance here at plus 900. That's worth some beer money. I think that's worth a little bit of beer money. I think of this channel as a beer money betting channel. You have a little bit of cash on you, $5, $10, $20. You're wondering what to do? Well, right here, this plus 900, if you put the money line with a 3-way with a tie, it's plus 1,000 on Dos Marinas. Now, do I think Dos Marinas absolutely wins? No. I favor Inoue, of course. He's the monster. He's top 3 pound for pound. Maybe top 5, but right around that. Top 3 to top 5. Pound for pound guy. But he showed vulnerability. against a bigger man. Now, here is again the counter argument, because you want to hear the counter argument to this. Inoue is a pound for pound monster. He stopped Maloney with a beautiful right hand. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Walked him right in. Pop! Just like that. Also, Das Marinas hasn't fought in 2 years. He may be sluggish. Ring rust is a thing. Inoue fought 2 years ago against Donaire, fought a year ago against Maloney, and now will be fighting Das Marinas. So he's going to be the fresher of the two fighters, the better of the two fighters, the stronger of the two fighters, at least in terms of punching power. So I think Inoue will win, but I think it's worth smelling the plus 900 in Das Marinas. In terms of the actual outcome, given that Das Marinas was only stopped once in his entire career, I'll bet against very weak opposition. I think the over 4.5 rounds is a reasonable bet. The over 4.5 rounds. I don't know how long it's going to take Inoue to find that distance. Remember, he has to shoot up 2 inches to land his overhand rights. And this is against a southpaw. So, I know they say that the right hand is the way to beat a southpaw, but you have to get used to a southpaw. It's always a little bit weird when you're in there with a southpaw. So the over 4.5 rounds at minus 121 is okay right there. I think that's an okay look. Again, I'm not completely sold on this fight. I don't have the conviction in Das Marinas. I just think that given the trouble that Inoue had against a similarly sized opponent with what seems to be similar punching power, and it was hurt, was bleeding, at points it looked like Donaire could have taken over in that fight. Again, the pedigree of Inoue kept him above Donaire and ultimately had him finish stronger. You can smell at plus 900, plus 1,000. You can give a little bit of a beer money kind of sprinkle on Das Marinas. But outside of that, I think this would probably go over 4.5. Probably at minus 121. That's kind of what we're looking at right there. So yeah, that's going to be that. Again, I think Inoue is a top 3 to top 5 pound for pound fighter right now, behind Canelo and probably Crawford. Now let's talk about some fights that I feel a little bit more strongly about. Now, everyone on this, anyone who listens to this channel knows that one of my, I guess, more favorite fighters to watch, fighters that I really, really like, is Gabriel Rosado. He's fighting against Bektemir Melikuziev this weekend. Now, Melikuziev, if you guys remember, was actually going to fight Kovalev before Kovalev popped hot for some steroid or something like that. And Melikuziev is this young kid. He's really more like, he's a big kid. He's, like wide. He has like calves like the size of bowling balls. He's actually short. He's 5'9.5". He's a southpaw from Uzbekistan, 7-0, 6 knockouts. Morgan Finch was the guy who stepped in for him at that time against Kovalev, and he got him out of there in 3 rounds. So here he is fighting against Gabe Rosado. And you guys know, and he's a huge favorite, minus 2,000 to Gabe Rosado's plus 750. Now, you guys know me. I like Gabe Rosado a lot. I believe Gabe Rosado fights to his level of opposition. He's a much sneakier fighter than given credit for. He is a much more talented fighter than his record indicates. I will say this. I will fight anybody on this. Argue anyone on this. I like Gabe Rosado. I'm always going to root for him. I'm always going to bet on him, regardless of whether I think the bet is good or not. Gabe Rosado is getting my money at plus 750. Absolutely is. Absolutely is. This is a 12-round fight. This is the kind of fight where a young kid, such as Bektemir, can be taught a lesson. He's gone 10 rounds once before against Vaughn Alexander. This was many years ago. 2 years ago, actually. I thought many years ago. 2 years ago, he's gone 10 rounds. He's been very active. He's fought twice in 2020, and he's fought once in 2021. Back in February. Now he is again. So this kid is fresh, and he's going to be getting better and better and better and better. Again, I don't know what his actual pedigree is, but I think that's what Gabe Rosado is here to test. Gabe Rosado, of course, recently came off a split decision loss to Daniel Jacobs, to which many people thought he won. Myself included. I thought he I wouldn't want to say embarrassed Daniel Jacobs, but he made Daniel Jacobs look very lethargic and apathetic in the ring. But Gabriel Rosado can do that. He's a very sneaky fighter. It's not particularly easy for anybody to get Gabriel Rosado out of there. He's going to teach you the pro game. So for me, I don't care if this is not logical. Gabriel Rosado is going to get my bet here. It's going to get like $20 or something like that. Maybe even get $50. Depends. Depends how I'm feeling that night or that day. I think this fight is actually happened earlier in the day, if I'm not mistaken, guys. So I think this fight is at like 4:30 p.m. as I'm seeing. But I'm absolutely rooting for my boy Gabriel Rosado, even though he's from Philadelphia and I'm from New York. So, again, this isn't, guys, none of this is advice, please. I'm telling you that I'm betting on a fighter that I like. I'm just betting on him. I don't care about, how good the other kid is and whatnot. I'm betting on him. If you want a little boxing analysis, then, obviously you can say, oh, Gabriel Rosado shot one, but he's not. I thought he beat Daniel Jacobs. He's 5'11", to that kid's 5'9.5". He's going to be 2 inches. He's going to be 2 inches taller. He's obviously the problem here is that Gabriel Rosado has been beaten up many times. That Golovkin fight, I think, probably took years off of his fight game. He really took a beating in that fight. And that's actually where I was made a fan, was in that fight. Since the Golovkin fight, I've followed Gabriel Rosado. What he did to Jalen Love, the Peter Killen fight, the Jermall Charlo fight, like all those fights were legit. He beats Clottey. He loses to Willie Monroe Jr., but I don't think he looked particularly that bad. Close fight against Martin Murray. The Glenn Tapia win. And then recently, obviously, what I thought was a Daniel Jacobs win. I'll always root for Gabriel Rosado. It's just what it is. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to say that he's definitely going to win or anything like that. I like him. I'm rooting for him, and I'm betting on him. Now the other fight this weekend, on which Rosado is the undercard, the Jamie Munguia versus Kamil Serramenta fight. Now, Kamil Serramenta recently was knocked out by Golovkin a year ago. I don't think Serramenta has a chance here. Not because Serramenta is bad or weak, but because Serramenta is he doesn't have the pop to keep Munguia off him. How you beat a guy like Munguia is you bully him back. Like, I think Golovkin at this age would absolutely put it on Munguia. That would be a bad fight for Munguia. Someone like Kamil is not going to do it. I don't think so. I think he is there for the stoppage. I think there is no chance Kamil wins. No chance. Munguia is going to put it on him. He's smaller. He's significantly weaker. There's no way. There's no chance. So, and if we're looking at the bets, right, again, Kamil is plus 1,000. I wouldn't not even beer money. There's no chance he wins him. You cannot fight you cannot win against a fighter like Munguia if you cannot hurt him back. Every single time we've seen Munguia in trouble is because the other fighter was able to hurt him. Kamil is not going to be able to do that. Munguia is going to walk right through his shots. So we have, what are the other odds? Okay, so we have the over 6.5 at plus 100 and the under 6.5 at minus 134. And that sounds about right. And this makes it a very difficult fight to bet on. Given that Kamil has already been stopped by Golovkin, and given that Kamil cannot keep Munguia off, I do not know if this fight can last 6.5 for you to take advantage of that plus 100. I do not know. I do not know if Kamil has the survival instincts to make it that long. This is also a last-second replacement. So I don't. There's very few things that point me to the direction of the over 6.5. And betting the under 6.5 at minus 134 doesn't feel too good, does it, guys? It really does not feel too good. This is one of those fights that I think is better off sitting out. I think this is one of those weekends in general where if you're a better, the only fight I feel comfortable is the over in the Jermall Charlo fight. That's the only spot. Everything else, guys, is just a lot of guesswork. It's just a lot of guesswork. And I'm being honest, it's very hard for me to look at these fights and tell you with any kind of conviction one way or the other. The favorites are the favorites for a reason. They really are. If you're betting against Inoue like I am, I'm throwing some beer money, you have to understand that is, I'm just trying to smell the water over there. I'm trying to smell the water. What do we got? But the water's dangerous. To use a bad Teddy Atlas metaphor. It's dangerous by the water. You don't know what's in there. And that, sometimes when the casinos have it right, when the casinos are good, when the casinos nail it, it's very difficult to make money. It's just very difficult. Imagine for a second the Inoue fight. I explained to you the problems with Inoue and why I feel Das Marinas is a reasonable choice for an upset. Having said all that, there's no way I would put $3,500 to win $100 on Inoue. That would be insane. And again, the over, with the Inoue fight, the over 4.5 is a -120, and the under 4.5 is a -110. The only bet there that makes sense for me is the over 4.5. Given that he fought a similarly sized Daenerys and wasn't able to do much, and he was able to do enough, of course, but he wasn't able to stop him. So, and this is tough, guys. This is tough. This is one of those weekends where, I kind of see that one fight, the over in the Jermall Charlo fight. That's really it. Although I will be taking the over in this fight again, as well, with taking Michael Das Marinas as a hedge, or the other way around, taking Das Marinas and hedging it with the over 4.5. But again, this is going to be an awesome weekend of boxing. I can't believe we were going to have Teofimo as well. Ain't that something, huh? Well, I mean, if you guys don't know, I'm going to let you know again. Although, if by any chance you're listening to this, you're probably at least relatively knowledgeable in the boxing game. Teofimo had caught COVID, and the fight is postponed by about a month. It's pushed back to August 14th. A month, 2 months. Pushed back to August 14th. So, it's a shame, but I guess it gives us more time to think about this. Also, a little side note, you again have the Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. Versus Hector Camacho Jr. exhibition. You have Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus versus Anderson Silva at cruiserweight. I am going to be rooting for Anderson Silva. No ifs, ands, or buts. Chavez Jr. is one of my least favorite fighters. He's now quit, I think, 2 or 3 times. And to throw Anderson Silva in there, I see what they're trying to do. I really hope Anderson Silva wins. I really, 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 really hope Anderson Silva wins. We'll be absolutely rooting for him. Absolutely. Felix Sturm is fighting in Germany. Felix Sturm, of course, was the guy who got robbed against Oscar De La Hoya at 160 and then stayed in Germany the rest of his career fighting nobody since that point. Well, that's not true. There were some good, Germans have good fighters. The Germans absolutely do have good fighters. I know people think, these Europeans, outside of the Russians and the Ukrainians, but whatever, the Russians, the other guys can't fight. And generally, you kind of be right, but Germans are the exception. They fight very well at the pro rank. There have been some good Germans. Obviously not all of them have been ethnic Germans, but there have been good Germans, especially the 175, 160-pound divisions, right in that range. There have been some absolutely excellent Germans. And I guess if you want to consider Klitschko a German rather than a Russian or Ukrainian, then that's another German, both. So, yeah, that's what it looks like over here. And guys, I want to talk about Deontay Wilder a little bit. I think Deontay Wilder has been getting online a lot of disrespect. Now, of course, he said some dumb stuff after his loss to Tyson Fury. And he's still saying some dumb stuff. But I think you guys are taking a little too hard on him. I don't know if it's a race thing or whatnot. Maybe it is, but guys, please. He's a knockout artist. He was a heavyweight champion. He could have, if it were any other ref, he wins the first fight by knockout. Now, obviously, the first fight wouldn't then be as historic as it was, but nonetheless, he can very easily win this next fight. Everyone thinking this trilogy is a foregone conclusion, guys, no. He's proven that he can stop Fury late in fights. He's proven that. He believes in himself. I think he is getting severely underrated. He's being made fun of and disrespected to, I think, a level that's unwarranted. It really is. Now, a lot of fighters say some dumb stuff. That doesn't, like, I think this is just, you guys are taking it too hard on him. That was his first real loss like that. Of course he's a little shell-shocked. Of course he's saying some dumb stuff. That's what happens sometimes to when you take a proud, undefeated knockout artist and he loses. Especially where, yes, he was stopped in that second fight, but he wasn't knocked out on the floor, arms spread open. He was beat up, and the ref stopped the fight. You know, he wasn't stopped in that kind of sense. Like what Povetkin stopped Dillian White in that first fight, right? And Ray Mercer absolutely stopped Tommy Morrison. By the way, that's the who I forgot about. I kept saying Ray Austin, Ray Mercer from last episode. Ray Mercer absolutely stopped Tommy Morrison. That's a stoppage. What Fury had over that's a real knockout. What Fury had over Wilder in the second fight was a ref stoppage. Wilder was getting beat up. Fury looked dominant. He knocked him down twice, but this wasn't like Wilder was completely unconscious. You know, even as the ref stopped the second fight, Wilder was talking, saying, "Why would you stop the fight?" Whatever. The whole point is, there's a little bit, I think, too much disrespect. A little bit too much disrespect for Wilder. And like I said, everyone says dumb stuff, but the disrespect is too much. Now, we have breaking news, I guess, today, or sort of breaking news. Oscar De La Hoya will box former UFC star Vitor Belfort in a pay-per-view exhibition on September 11th. Cool. I mean, I don't know much about Vitor Belfort. I mean, I've seen him lose a couple times. I know he was supposed to be like some hot shit back in the day in the UFC. But again, I'm not really an MMA fan. I don't really watch MMA. I don't know much about its history. I can't tell you if this guy was a striker or a grappler or anything like that. But all these old timers are going to be fighting a lot now. I think UFC and MMA kind of winds up looking a little bit bad here. And I kind of feel sorry for the guys because they're fighters just in a slightly different sport. It's like NASCAR drivers going to race in Formula 1 or vice versa. Just because there's some carryover, and there is, doesn't mean that, you know, like one sport is better, the other guy's tougher, or any of that nonsense. These are two different sports that have some overlap. And I feel a little bit bad that these UFC guys keep coming over. I mean, I don't feel bad. They're getting paid. They're getting paid more than they ever did by Dana. But I feel bad for, like, what it makes some casuals think about the UFC. Just because a guy gets beat up in boxing doesn't mean that he would also lose in an MMA fight. Vice versa. You just saw with Clarissa Shields. She was taken down in 2 rounds quickly. Quickly. Her boxing was negated almost right away. The same, like, if you fought a more seasoned practitioner of MMA and jiu-jitsu, and they know they're fighting a boxer, you get taken down right away. And you won't be getting up. You know, I love boxing. That's my favorite sport. But I also don't want to disrespect other people's sports just because. It's funny to say, an MMA fighter lost in boxing, they can't strike. Well, no shit, they're not boxers. What the fuck? And as a matter of fact, even the stand-up, I mentioned it, even the stand-up game in MMA, there's the hand game in MMA is different than it is in boxing. Because you have to account for kicks and takedowns. So you're going to throw your punches differently because your stance is going to be different because you have to account for those other things. Now, again, I'm not trying to, like, defend MMA or anything like that. I just sometimes you hear people saying, oh, these MMA guys suck. Well, suck in what? They're not boxers. It's like saying these NASCAR drivers suck at driving the Formula 1 cars. Well, yeah, because they're not Formula 1 drivers or vice versa. So, again, guys, that's going to do it for me. We got 3 fights. We got 3 picks. Let's go over them. We like the over in the Jermall Charlo fight. We like the play on the upset in the Inoue fight on Dos Marinas. And we like, again, the over 4.5 over there. We won't even touch the Munguia fight. Won't even touch it. There's no chance Camille has. Gabriel Rosado I'm betting on Gabriel Rosado. I'm not saying I just like the guy. I'm always going to bet on him. I think that covered most of the fights that I want to talk about this weekend. That's it. It's over.
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong man, good boy, just.